I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of the Foul Playland. As always, I am Sir Foul Player of Brooklyn on my new venture, Behold, here on this wonderful, at times frustrating platform, YouTube. Nevertheless, we carry on talking about the subjects of the day, talk about international subjects as well as domestic U.S. news. All kinds of news is my favorite topic in general. But let me get right into the grit and gory. Um, the story of the day has to do with Don Lemon instigating a protest in a church. This happened yesterday during a Sunday service. I looked at some of the footage in regards to Don Lemon's involvement, and he's now being called out, I believe, by Harmit Dillon, and I think she's like a assistant attorney general at the federal level. And I don't want to make it seem like as if I saw all the video footage of it. I just watched earlier. I watched some. I'm watching little bits of it throughout the day, like see if I find different bits of it. But I've been running around. But I just watched a perspective that I haven't seen before, which showed filming of the protest from the outside of the church, where you could hear audio inside the church. I guess Don Lemon um, gave audio equipment to one of the protesters, and he was filming from the outside while the protesters, you could hear them inside of the church. And this was a snowy scene. It was snowing outside of the church. Um, and again, this is a frigid Minneapolis. And when you're in a house of worship, if you will, like I mean, I attended the church as a young man. I'm not religious today, but for a large group of people, I mean, like to enter a church with all these church shootings that happens nowadays. I mean, if you're an attendee of the church, one wouldn't feel comforted by the fact that there's this large group of people, especially a lot of these shootings that happen nowadays are done by two classes of people for the most part. Many of the shootings that are done today, like whether that be mostly in churches, are done by radical leftists, mostly like in the trans community, in addition to radical Muslims, of which Minneapolis has many of them. I mean, I heard the accents of some of the people that were in there, and they had a tinge of that um, Arab accent, you know. And I know the Arab accent. I grew up in Sunset Park, right next to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. I went to Fort Hamilton High School with a ton of Arabs. A lot of Arab dudes I'm very cool with, but when they were saying stop ice, or hands up, don't shoot, like you could hear like a tinge of that accent. Nevertheless, you also had radical leftists. One moron, liberal, a white guy, had actually put up video from his perspective, and he's screaming in the parishioners' faces and trying to um, threatening people too that if they touch them, like see what happens, like if they touch them. And again, I mean, like the two biggest communities of shooters in churches like this or Catholic schools, Christian facilities are usually, again, either radical leftists or radical Muslims. Peace, Mark Nash. Glad to see you here as well. Big ups to you. First commenter. Thank you, man. But again, looking at the perspective, and I just saw this video now of some like, and it was actually Don Lemon that was shooting it. Like he actually was shooting the video from the outside of the church as the protest got underway. Um, thank you. First comment, first like. Much love, man. Good looking out too, bro. I really do appreciate it. And when the people start with the protest, which they started screaming initially, um, they were the parishioners were running out of the church. It they like there's a side view and two people that ran out of the church. Again, it's like snowing. I didn't mean to delete the comment. I don't know. I don't even know how to what the hell, how to mess with this. So apologies. I saw the Don Lemon, but the people that were running out of the church, like on the left hand side, because I mean, if you got a bunch of people, radical leftists entering into your house of worship, and again, radical leftists, they if they got beef with religions, it's definitely Christians. I mean, they don't go run up. Damn, my man Hood is calling me in the midst of a live stream. But they wouldn't run up into a synagogue. I mean, and these are people that are pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel. Like I haven't seen many instances in which like people run into a synagogue, but they would never run into a mosque. Neither. They usually have beef, like the radical left, with Christians. And again, I'm no Christian, but if you're a Christian attendee of these churches, and you see a bunch of people pop in like out of nowhere, with non-church clothes, or start screaming like these protesters did. I mean, like my natural reaction would be to run out with my family. And from the perspective that I just saw a couple of minutes ago, which Don Lemon had shot the video of from the outside of the church as the protesters were getting underway, there you could see a family, and it's like a mother with two young children that run out the church on the left hand side like an emergency exit. And the kid that first ran out, it looks like a boy of like maybe less than 10 years old. He busted his ass. He fell, like slipped on ice. And then the second boy that ran out, same thing. He busted his ass in that same patch of ice. So it's not a good look. I mean, like, and again, you can't put things past the radical left. And sometimes I'm even glad that these things happen, like where the radical left paints itself in the lunatic light that they really should be shown upon them. A lot of times, like people justify the ends justify the means when it comes to the radical left taking part in these things that are really nuts. Whether that be rioting, tearing up cities, protesting in churches, based. A lot of times people will tend to look past like the things that the radical left does, because they think that they're coming from a perspective of justice or looking out for the greater good of people, or because some people feel that they hate Trump and that Trump orange man bad, so these people don't like Trump, they're good. And it's good to see that these people show themselves for what they are. Like I mean, like it's hard um to conversate with people that look at things in a really tribalistic fashion, as if when you're not rocking with them politically, then automatically it's you're a rival. Automatically, they think that because you don't like their politics, that you're coming from a perspective of racism, or you know um being pro like a politician. My man Mark Nash said Trump is trash. I don't know how the other comment ain't show up. Said calling a gay man a zesty nickname isn't insulting, it's flirting. Don Lemon, like he calls themselves that. And like these light skinned dudes be trying to switch their names up to sound French or some shit. Like, not, like, especially in the well, they haven't been doing that as much in the past decade. Like, but a lot of these high yellow brothers, like they I remember when I was coming up, they used to try to fake the funk like they had some other tinge of other ethnicities. Like, now all of a sudden, like, and usually a lot of these light skinned cats be at the front of the line stirring shit up too. Like, when it comes to these racial issues, I don't know. I can't call it. Oh, I'm calling it as I see it. Nah, his name is definitely Lemon. The show is calling the Lemon Drop, not Lemon Drop. Yeah, the his show is called the Lemon Drop. I didn't know that, and that's a spicy name too. Lemon Drop for his show. But going back to it too. I mean, I'm looking at Twitter too. A lot of like the people on Twitter want Don Lemon arrested. I mean, and most of a lot of the Twitter that I read happens to be from the tinged conservatively. Um, but Don Lemon's making it seem as if this or happened organically, and as if this protest like, was like a First Amendment freedom of speech kind of thing. And it's kind of, to me, it's really, I'm 100% a free speech absolutist. But this kind of showing up in a house of worship, I think it's really pressing against that line, even for someone like myself, who's, I mean, in terms of free speech absolutist, I think that you should be able to say anything you want, including racist stuff. Let me see. Damn, what I missed. What he do? Yeah, he basically met up with some cats that were gonna do a protest in a church yesterday, and then they rolled up in there and they started a like they like the church probably had like 40 heads in it altogether, and the people that ran up in there probably had like 30, 40 heads themselves. So they started, like, they rolled up in the church, they ain't saying nothing at first, and then they started, like, hands up, don't shoot protest, saying, like, calling out the girl's name who got bucked at by the ICE officer, yelling. One of the cats that was recording, not with Don Lemon, some other, like, white dude with a beard, crazy lefty lunatic looking dude. He was getting all up in people's faces, like, like screaming, like, "Oh, you're not a real Christian," like all. But Don Lemon was also on top of that too. He's pressing people for interviews while this is happening. He's pressing the pastor. Yeah, so they came in there to make a scene. Yeah, exactly. But again, I'm not opposed to people making scenes or practicing free speech in ways to inconvenience, like, the people that they're protesting against, to a limit, though. I mean, like, when you're, like, doing it in a house of worship, again, like, churches get blasted up, and only churches. I don't see, like, many synagogues and mosques getting blasted up at the propensity that Christian churches do. But and then you got a bunch of people, like, rolling up in there at a time when things are, so tribalized, and, like, when the temperature politically is so hot, like, the distaste for Christians from the lunatic left is at a really, really all-time high. I mean, like, they always hate the Christians for some reason. They and then on top of that too, Don Lemon part particularly is that he's kind of like letting people know, like, where he's at, and, like, that they, like, what they got going on. I think they called the operation, like, the protest, they called it Operation Pull Up, like, basically pull up to a church and start an impromptu protest in the midst of, like, a church. Many states have laws against that. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure they do. I would probably guess that if there was one that wouldn't have it, it would probably be like a liberal state like Minnesota, a radical liberal state like Minnesota. You know, but it wasn't. It definitely wasn't a good look. And at times, like, even with the whole protests that are happening now, like in Minneapolis, like at times I'm like, like maybe they should go in there and clear that shit up with like troops. But it's a bad look for those people that are doing it. I mean, one, I mean, they really don't know what they're protesting. They may be protesting that white women got bucked at by the ICE officer and ultimately, unfortunately, lost their life. They are probably in large part protesting the fact that the Somali community in Minneapolis or Minnesota in general are getting called out for scheming, and that they're the first victims in terms, no, or they're the first group as far as nationalities go that are getting called out for scheming against the American taxpayer. Let me see. Go to the source, the White House. Yeah, maybe later on. Now they have a First Amendment right to protest, and again, like I believe in the First Amendment right to protest as well. But to do it in a church, like in an instance like that, I mean, again, too, like a lot of the people that were in there, they ran the hell up out of there, um, thinking that something bad was gonna happen. Um, and when you well, I'm pretty sure as long as they aren't tearing up the city, let them be. Definitely not in a church. Yeah, maybe you're alluding to the fact of they have a First Amendment right to protest in the city. My bad. And again, in terms of like the church, like a lot of the people that were definitely running up out of there, like two kids busted their ass back to back. Maybe you'll see the video later on because it's a popular story. In terms of like the city of Minneapolis protesting, they beat up some dude like that counter protester. I don't know who the counter protester is. Like I did see video of them whooping his ass. They actually also stole the camera of a streamer who I don't know who he is. I heard the name, but I never watched his streams. His name is Nick Sortor, and I know he's has a big presence on Twitter. But from what I see, he basically documents like a lot of these shit liberal protests. Not every cause that I don't agree with is a shit liberal protest, or but he goes specifically after the ones in which there's a high propensity of liberal lunatics are gonna be at. And I think he's gotten like beat up in Seattle recently, like outside of an ICE facility. And in this protest, they ran up on him and they stole his camera in Minneapolis. And from what the video that I saw, they deboed his camera and then they took it in a red vehicle. The red vehicle that took the camera was actually running away, like driving away on the sidewalk. And then after he got his camera stolen, there was like probably like 10 other people up in his grill, yelling at him, like like making it, basically like the liberal lunatic left does. Like if you don't agree with their politics, they call you a Nazi. They were calling him that word as well. Hopefully that I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. And with the footage was forwarded, and the FBI actually commented, and they said we're on the case, like like that they were going to look into it. Some other people, I guess, internet investigators did look up the license plate of the vehicle, and it's actually owned by a person who, Somalian man or woman, or registered to a Somalian man or woman that runs a autism care center in Minneapolis, which is basically one of these scams that I talked about in yesterday's live stream. Not to say that these people don't need daycares or adult daycare centers or these medical centers, but I, for one, being in New York, know that a lot of times when those medical facilities, the case that I mentioned yesterday in New York, a lot like it's probably way worse done by like Russians, by Chinese. They're straight scheming, like they straight make it seem like they do 10 different things in like a facility that's like probably like 1,200 square feet, acupuncture, talk to psychologists, and all these people are Russian cats too, or Chinese. Um, they'll have you consult with like two bullshit doctors that'll see you for like 2 seconds, and like it's like 12 different instances that you'll get like that they'll charge either your insurance, or most times they'll charge Medicaid for like 10 different services in the span of like 30 minutes. And most of the times it's run by like outsiders. And I look at it too. I mean, like, my brother Mark Nash is a so-called black man of America. Could picture a instance in which a so-called black dude from America could start a medical facility and scheme at this propensity, like where like, or start a fake adult daycare center that has, or a kids adult daycare center, let's say, that has 99 kids that don't show up, and it's all being paid for by the taxpayer, millions of dollars. How fast would they run up on that shit, like the feds and whatnot? That shit wouldn't last for a couple months. But you have these people from out, like, I don't consider Somalians have the same struggle as a so-called black man of America. You know, I think that these cats just pulled up into America, and somehow they get put onto this scheme, and whether you're white, black, Hispanic, we're all paying for it via tax money, and like they look at Americans, regardless of nationality or color, as if we're stupid and like they're smart. Like they constantly, like, all these communities gloat about how lazy Americans are, but meanwhile, like, these people are boosting their communities up by scamming. And again, like, you, they may be other people scamming, but let's bag all scams, like, or let's bag all scammers. And a lot of times, like, now that this Minneapolis case has come up into the lexicon of people talking about it, we're now hearing that California, New York City, that their scams probably dwarf Minnesota's. And I know for sure from firsthand accounts, like, all the people that do it in New York City are foreigners. And if this is a way in which we end all the scams, I'm with it. Because I know my people ain't. I don't see no Puerto Rican medical facilities that are scamming like this, or adult daycare centers. And I sure as hell don't see so-called black Americans that are able to take these opportunities and scam. If they did, I mean, I probably wouldn't even trip like that. But like, to see these people that don't have love for people like myself, a so-called minority or of America, to hell with them. I rather, like, I would align myself with Americans more than I would with these foreign schemers. And these protests, like the one that Don Lemon participated in, are just as motivated by the fact that these schemes in the case of Minneapolis and Minnesota are being uncovered. They're just as motivated by the fact that this is getting shut down as they are for that white chick getting bucked at in a car by the ICE agent. In fact, they're probably more motivated by the latter. Let me see some of the comments though. That's scary for them, especially with all the church shootings. Yeah, definitely, man. And my mom goes to church too. I mean, like, shaking my head, gotta stay strapped to protect yourself and your personal property. Yeah, definitely, man. It's scary. Like with the mob too. I mean, like, I wouldn't know how to play it. Like, I wouldn't know if I gotta, throw some lead down at a mob like that's trying to jukes me like that, or who knows. It's scary times though, because I'm gonna go full Rittenhouse trying to take my shit, and all power. I'm a big time proponent of the Second Amendment as well. I think that more people should be strapped. I think we'd have a better society if everybody were to operate under the assumption that the person that I'm being a shithead to is very likely to be armed. So let me not be such a shithead. I think a lot of people would behave themselves far better. And in comparisons to Miami and New York City, I go to Miami a lot, and I have the misfortune of still going to my hometown, New York City, a lot. But Miami's hood, like, Miami has a lot of hood parts to it. Miami has a lot of people that are tough, but you'll see a lot less foolishness or just arguments or dumb disagreements out in the public in a place like Miami than you do in New York City. And again, I mean, like Miami is big on their weaponry and more power. Again, but if you guys get a chance, check out the Don Lemon video. I think Don Lemon um, was in on the fact that this protest was going down. He met up with the protesters prior to them pulling up to this area. They seemed to know who he was. The lady who was leading the protest, who was running this Operation Pull Up, seemed to have a relationship with Don Lemon, like as if they knew each other. And then on top of that, too, when Don Lemon pulled up to the church, he's doing these aggressive interviews with the churchgoers, with the pastor, trying to put them on the spot to make them cave into the ideology of ICE being bad, so they deserve the fact that their church was run into by these radical left lunatics. What I honestly, in spite of the fact that again I'm a free speech absolutionist, I think that Don Lemon should get in trouble for that. I think that the presence of Don Lemon um, probably incited more people to show up to this impromptu protest. Probably gave impetus for the lady who was leading the protest to even have it go down. If he told her prior to, like, listen, like, I'm gonna be live streaming for my shitty ass platform, um, it would probably give the impetus for some other smelly leftist lunatics to show up and to because they want to get on camera like everybody else nowadays. They just want to be on camera, and the Don Lemon having his camera crew show up probably incentivize other morons to show up in order to get some short-term publicity. But man, my poor cat's coughing, man. I have a stray cat that um has been in my house for a couple months, and she's been having a bad cough. I try to let her run free in the house, but she stays stuck on one window. I feel terrible for her. Let me see if I could show her. Yeah, what the fuck in a church? Give me. Yeah, unfortunately, that's how these people do. I mean, like again, with leftist lunatics, the ends justify the means. Like they don't care that these are parishioners and churchgoers, or the fact that the people within the church would think that they're potentially gonna get shot at, like, or that a potential church shooting may break out by these people who are highly tribalized by politics. They don't care about any of that stuff. Like, and they were acting that way like while that protest, like that impromptu protest, was going down. They were basically trying to give these people a purity test as it's happening. Like, getting all up in their grills, like, like, so you agree with ICE? Like, like they got like, so they got to give you their, like, the answer that they want right on the spot, like, or otherwise, like, they'll still be in your grill like they were at this church protest. And again, like the worst of, like, there was a white cat. I mean, he looked like he was in his 30s with a beard, a neon jacket, like a worker's jacket, like all up in people's grills, like touch me and see what happens, like, or so you agree with, like, you call yourselves Christians, like, so you agree with ICE, like, and Don Lemon was doing the same stuff, like in his interviews. There was actually a guy who was trying to walk away from him, and he was interviewing him for like 4 minutes, and the guy was, like, not trying to get into a political back and forth with somebody who, like in the case of Don Lemon, already got his mind made up, like, disagree with ICE, and that's it, you're bad. or agree with ICE deportations and you're bad. You know, but he's trying to have a debate with one of the parishioners, and the guy's being nice, talking to him for like 4 minutes. And once he saw that Don Lemon was you know set in his tribalistic mindset, he tried walking away, and Don Lemon is like trying to like basically chase him down, you know, like and keep uh arguing with the dude. But I think that it was a terrible look for leftist lunatics. At times, when leftist lunatics make themselves look stupid, you know, I sometimes take joy in that. Honestly, you know, I'm glad nobody got hurt, except for those two kids that busted their ass when they were running from the church, probably thinking that their lives were in danger. But you know, again, picture that happening in a mosque. Like, if people were to run up in a mosque, one, the people in the mosque, they probably wouldn't. They probably don't play that shit. Like, they probably whoop their ass. Like, Christians kind of turn the other cheek. People in the mosque don't. People in most synagogues in Brooklyn will probably whoop your ass, like in a major way, for trying some foolishness like that too. But these people, one, leftist lunatics, again, hate Christians, hate Christianity, and I'm not speaking for as if I'm a Christian, because I'm not. But they also know that Christians will tend to turn the other cheek, and it's an audience in which they could do some stupidity like this. I honestly hope that there is a law that prohibits you from staging impromptu protests in a house of worship. I doubt that that liberal ass Lily White Minnesota has a law like that. But I do hope that people that do stuff like that in a house of worship, particularly, do get in trouble. But with that, and most of all, I hope Don Lemon, and that stupid bitch that was in charge of that group, um, get in trouble for trying a stunt of this proportion. But with that, I got a college football game to watch. I don't know who I want to win today. I love Miami, even though I hate their quarterback. But I love Indiana, or the fact that Indiana has made it this far. It's a great story. But Indiana's been whooping ass, and I usually root for underdogs. My son's rooting for Indiana. I don't know. It's gonna be a good game though. I think that Indiana will win, but I love a lot of the players from Miami. Ruben Bain, Mesidor, the receiver Tony. I think if Tony were to come out in the draft next year, I don't even think he's eligible. Um, you could probably throw him ahead of many of the quarterbacks that are coming out in next year's draft class. I think I don't know if his name is Malachi Tony, but he's the truth. I mean, he's just a weapon, right? And they don't throw the ball to him enough. I mean, like a lot of times they use him in a more gadgety fashion, handing off the ball, short passes, kickoff returns. But God, this dude is so good. I love the way he plays the game. Um, in terms of Indiana, I love Fernando Mendoza. I don't think that the Jets are going to be able to get him. I like the Jets and the Giants. Um, but I like Elijah Surratt, their receiver. Omar Cooper, he's pretty good too. I like both teams, but I don't know who I want to win. Um, I like Indiana's coach a lot too. I like Miami's coach a little bit too. Latin brother, good to see. Good to see us making it at that level. But it's gonna be a good game nevertheless. And I hope you guys could give yourselves a break from the lunacy that is American geopolitics, and kick back and watch football. But my prediction: Indiana probably wins by 4 points. I think the betting line, which I hate betting lines, I hate even talking about betting lines, but I saw that it was 7.5 for Indiana. I don't know. Miami's defense is really good though, but I think Mesidor got hurt the last game, so really can't call it. But maybe Indiana by a touchdown or 4 points. With that, I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. Hope to come back tomorrow. I'm out. Peace.